What's a job that sounds 100 illegal but somehow isn't? Story 1. I break into buildings, sneak around, steal things, plant devices on their network, and lie to people to convince them to do things they're not supposed to do. My biggest score was stealing the entire mailbox, file structure, and contacts from the CEO of a major international airline. I'm a physical pen tester, and this is all 100 legal. Story 2. Private equity buying private companies, putting all the purchase debt on the company, stripping them for parts, and then borrowing a ton of money on the company and paying yourself massive bonuses. Bankrupt the company and they walk away with a ton of money. Answer. Stuff like this was illegal at one time. However, decades of repealing, not updating, and expanding all sorts of financial safeguards, laws and regulations allows all sorts of things, such as the above, to occur. So now we live in an age of shrinking market diversity by the year and the second rise in the US of the mega monopoly not seen since the Gilded Age. People aren't taught in schools how the financial system works, nor is history, and then they keep electing certain people into office, which usually ushers in severe economic problems later. And yeah, all these turbulent economic conditions and financial downturns are usually preventable provided people cast an informed vote. Yet here we are. Story 3. The small company then must either go bankrupt or sell the patent to the big company for peanuts. Story 4. Tow truck drivers feel entirely too safe. They're car thieves with a charter. Rescue tows, on the other hand, are true heroes. One once violated CHP guidelines and did me a solid. He was supposed to bill me $200 and take me to the salvage yard, but took $50 to drop me in my driveway. CHP wasn't happy, but fudged them. Story 5. Goon squads, or whatever they call them, paying a professional team of people to kidnap your troublesome kid in the middle of the night while they're asleep. Since they aren't adults, parents can consent to this for their children. In any other case, it would be kidnapping and assault. Story 6. Being an adult worker but filming it and saying, "We were making adult content" is legal. Being an adult worker and not filming it is illegal. This is because prostitution is illegal, but making pornographic movies is not. Story 7. Hacker. Professional hacker. They know why you system is vulnerable, and they know how criminal would hack you system. You want professional hacker to reveal the weakness in your system that you can't see. Story 8. It sounds like something straight out of a Wild West movie chasing down fugitives for money, but it's a real and legal profession in certain states. Bounty hunters can legally arrest people who have skipped bail, often with fewer restrictions than police. Wild, right? Other examples. Dumpster diving for profit. People legally collect items from trash bins to resell. Ethical hacking. Getting paid to hack into companies' systems to find vulnerabilities. Repo man. Legally taking back someone's car in the dead of night. Story 9. I used to help this guy out on the occasional job, and he takes me to this opulent mansion. Tells me the homeowner is a substances dealer. I'm like, okay. Then he says, just kidding, he's a pharmaceutical executive. Story 10. When you say, I sell information, but is technically something common to do nowadays with certain websites that makes you pay a subscription in order to reveal a full article or even lateral information of people to reach out, leads for further publishing or partnerships. Story 11. Helping someone disappear isn't really illegal as long as they're not in trouble with the law or dodging debt. People do it, just drop everything and start over without telling anyone. It's totally doable, but kinda sad when you think about it. Story 12. Politician. It shouldn't be legal to trade stocks when you're the ones responsible for regulating the industries you're investing in. It also shouldn't be legal to accept favors and bribes in exchange for influence. It shouldn't be legal for these cowards to withhold votes or vote present. Take a fudge stand and do your fudge job. And these clowns shouldn't be allowed to vote for their own raises while everyone else suffers. Story 13. This is the sub everyone came to, thinking they'd find some cheat code job where you get a livable wage while not actually doing anything, only to be reminded that those jobs only exist for people who already have more money than they know what to do with. Story 14. Once I met a guy whose job was just to find security breaches for companies and major events. He was telling me that his most recent job was to see if he could get into this hotel that was hosting a political convention. He didn't give me details on how he got in, but he ended up staying in the hotel for 14 days without getting caught. During the convention, he was able to break into the rooms of several important politicians and take photos of the room interior personal belongings. The crazy thing was he never got caught. Once his report was completed, he just walked down to the front desk and let them know he had been living there for like 2 weeks. Story 15. Professional cuddler. Like you literally get paid to hug strangers. No badge, no training, just vibes and solid personal boundaries. Sounds like a setup for an undercover sting, but nah, it's totally legit. Capitalism really said, touch people for money, just not that way. Story 16. Fortune tellers. I worked in the biggest call center platform in Europe. If you're seeing one or consider doing so, go see a therapist. You'll actually get help from them, and they're not actively trying to drain your bank account. Story 17. My mom lost nearly everything she owned because of this. Eviction coming, living out of her car, deadline to have everything out of the old apartment. I helped her scrape together just enough money to rent a storage unit. All our family photo albums, home videos, mom's wedding dress, furniture, washer and dryer, everything gone. Story 18. On a somewhat related note, local governments selling off publicly owned parking lots or street parking to private parking management companies and allowing them to charge whatever the hell they want. Story 19. In our city, we had a towing company that used to remove globes from traffic lights at the busiest intersections, and another towing company that poured oil onto the road to cause vehicles to slide. Many of the tow truck guys in our city have police radios somehow and listen in. The tow trucks get to a scene before ambulances and police in most cases. Story 20. This is an American thing. Last time I needed a tow here in Sweden, I was literally in the middle of the wilderness of Jumatland, 50 miles from the closest town. Called road assistance, and an hour and a half later the flatbed showed up. Confirmed the tire was shredded, loaded the car up, passed out bottles of water to us, and all 4 of us jumped in for the ride to the garage for a new tire. Bill was covered by my insurance. No paperwork, bullshit, or issues. Yeah, I don't miss living in the USA most of the time. Story 21. I had a procedure denied by my insurance that my doctor said was precautionary, but still necessary. First time I've ever actually engaged with my insurance provider outside of a $25 copay. So now it's just, well, let's just see if this gets worse, instead of we should fix this right away. I'm not super worried. It's not something life-threatening. But if a doctor says it should happen, it should happen. Seems simple to me. Answer: I have something similar. I injured my shoulder and you can see a bone sticking out in a weird way. I can still do almost everything, but I have had my PCP and an ortho say that it needs to get fixed, or I'll get arthritis like 20 years early. Other wants to take your premiums and not pay out. Story 22. You know, I used to think you'd need to be a freak with an extremely stunted capacity for empathy to be a health insurance claims adjuster and not fudge dislike yourself. Then I dated a girl who was a claims adjuster, and I no longer think that. I know it for a fact firsthand. Story 23. I had United Healthcare deny a cochlea implant 3 times, saying they don't cover hearing aids, when a coworker had the same operation a year earlier. 3 months later, they called to ask how was their service. Yeah, that conversation didn't go well. Story 24. I had a medication denied because they would only give me a higher dose. It's a controlled substance because people can develop dependence, soma, and I asked my doctor for the lowest dose. Turns out the lowest dose is also the least commonly prescribed, so it costs like 5x as much. Caremark said they'd only cover the higher dose of a controlled substance that can cause addiction. Story 25. Went to my dermatologist and wanted to try and change my treatment plan for my psoriasis. Was recommended a new ointment for my face and an at-home injectable option. One is ridiculously cheap, the other is stupidly overpriced. They denied the ointment and approved the authorization for the injectable. They operate on their own wavelength. Story 26. Health, auto, home, pet, you name it. Insurance as it stands is a total scam for a lot of Americans. How are you paying for a service in which you get nothing in return, especially if you're rightfully owed that money because the claims made checks off on everything that's in the policy, and they can deny you for some bullshit reason? Story 27. One of my childhood bullies did that, at least at the time that I found her Facebook profile and then blocked it. I understand why an insurance company would deny claims, fraud being a main reason. But yeah, she'd probably do it for kicks and grins. Story 28. Was trying to find parking for a street festival last week, and my friend kept saying we should park in a private lot with no other cars. I'm like, bruh, 100 gonna get towed there. You'll happily pay a parking ticket, but I'm not gonna get towed. Story 29. I'm not a physical pen tester, but it both interests and disturbs me how infrequently I'm stopped and asked what I'm doing when I'm out working, much less asked for the documentation explaining it. I'm not sure if I'm successfully pulling off a look act like you belong. I probably look very stereotypical contractor, because I am one, or if they just don't care. So much for all those restricted area signs. Story 30. The chair of my degree program has some interesting stories about physical pen testing, cleaning crews letting him in because he wrote he forgot his badge in his office in Spanish, or a security door only going to the drop ceiling and climbing over it through said ceiling. Story 31. Stuff like this was illegal at one time. However, decades of repealing, not updating, and expanding all sorts of financial safeguards, laws, and regulations allows all sorts of things such as the above to occur. So now we live in an age of shrinking market diversity by the year and the second rise in the US of the mega monopoly not seen since the Gilded Age. People aren't taught in schools how the financial system works, nor is history. And then they keep electing certain people into office, which usually ushers in severe economic problems later. And yeah, all these turbulent economic conditions and financial downturns are usually preventable, provided people cast an informed vote. Yet here we are. Story 32. Corporate bleeding. PE is ruthless and they own everything. If they decide your company doesn't have what it takes, or even if they already own your competitor and it's more profitable, they will fire everyone and run the company on fumes to extract the maximum profit before it goes under, and then directly benefit from that company's market share going to the competitor they own. It's like insider trading on steroids. Answer. It is just a game of shady tactics. For example, one of their companies was due for an exit from their portfolio, so they, as the board of directors, forced all of the other companies they owned, and called in some personal favors, I'm sure, to have everyone and their mother buy their products and services. Then they used this money they basically forced out of their other companies as revenue in the one company, and made hundreds of millions of dollars on the sale because of the revenue multiple. It's almost so stupidly easy. It sounds illegal, but it isn't. Story 33. How do they get the loans when they do this? The bank that makes the loan either has to have recourse for the fraud of it all, or would not have made that loan at all because of the debt they moved over, right? I get that it's done, but how is not detected by the bank, or allowed to go unpaid? A court would surely have the power to say no this kind of bankruptcy. Story 34. Naive question, but how is it bad? Most of the money they make by their exit. Exit by selling to another PE fund or pension fund. Basically, sophisticated investors that will not buy at a good price. If the company is fudge, doesn't have enough workers, nobody will buy the company. What am I missing? Story 35. I have a friend that lasted 2 months in a social services job that dealt with the entire spectrum of child abuse. She said every day she just cried, then wanted to violently hurt the perpetrators, then cried again. She couldn't handle it, and I didn't blame her one bit. Story 36. They changed the assignments to 60 days with therapists available in a classified environment. The latest FBI tool is an AI scanner and reviews millions of images and only highlights ones for review. Saves a lot of time and minimizes the impact on analysts. Story 37. I work for Canadian Border Services. My manager used to work in the Prohibited Goods Unit, reviewing all kinds of horrendous things. They were responsible for making determinations on whether certain adult content, dislike literature, etc., was illegal, prohibited, or legal permissible. Not a job I'd be interested in. Story 38. Another side of patent trolling, Company A buys Company B strictly for the patents. They lay off all the employees of Company B, then sue other companies for infringement and profit with virtually no overhead. Story 39. An old friend of mine was the coordinator of domestic violence in Northamptonshire. Like, Dave, you've done so much damage in Kettering, so let's all give a big hand for Dave. No, Dave, that's applause. Stop hitting people in the group, or the gang violence cords will think I'm trying to take over their turf. So, while Dave's recovering from his tranquilizers, let's see more action from Kai and Corby. You can press trousers, you can press domestic partners, and/or other family members, though they only count for half if we even count them at all. Children don't count until they die. So it's like we always say, no cutting corners, only spouses. Story 40. I struggle with this one. I know of some small groups that have made a huge impact on mental health support in my state. I work in an underrepresented industry, and our lobbyists have helped us to be understood and represented at the federal level. Story 41. I don't think lobbying in and of itself is bad. As others stated, this is a constitutionally protected activity. What's troubling is the revolving door between public service and lobbyists. It's unethical for an elected official to do the bidding of a special interest group with the implied promise of a lucrative lobbying career after their term of public service has ended. Story 42. If you're literally talking about an actual adult worker filming a session with a client, it absolutely doesn't make it legal. Adult content has lots of permitting and processes for the crew and actors to go through. Prostitutes can't just film a session and it suddenly becomes legal because they claim it's just an adult content video. Story 43. Half the companies just employ some junior person to run a scan and poke at whatever vulnerabilities are found with automated tools. The real attackers, like security researchers and such, just make bank off of bug bounties or government contracts. The rest of the industry is so full of grifters. Most of the security engineers I know can't even filter a fudge Excel document. Story 44. I did it when I was a cop. It's not as great as you may think. I didn't enjoy it. You spend most of your time doing surveillance from a vehicle. When you do get to interact with the criminals, it's pretty lackluster. Story 45. Have you heard about the undercover police scandal in the UK? They had kids with the people they were observing. The fathers then disappeared when their assignments ended. What were these women they were observing guilty of? Political activism and environmentalism. Story 46. In Illinois, locksmiths have to have a state license. Who has the most disciplinary infractions out of all the licensed Illinois professions? No, not nurses or barbers, but locksmiths. Most common reason, lying about their criminal records. Barbers and beauticians do have a lot because there are so many of them, and the most common issue with them is practicing without a license. Story 47. Yes, and tell me they don't all know who is going to say what and when, so they know how to position their portfolios. On a Friday morning, we have a tariff comment to help along the market that was already drifting down the past few days because of light volume this week. Let's see who loaded up on put options or sold stocks heavily yesterday. Technical analysis has shown an interesting pattern here. It seems as though when the market reaches the resistance or support levels, news seems to come out. Fascinating, as Spock would say. Story 48. Yeah, my mom got towed one time. The guy made us. And like 5 other people wait for 3 hours after the time, he told us to go to the lot to pick the car up and pulled a gun when someone told him it was unprofessional. I got everyone's number because I wanted to get them all to complain to the city. Fortunately for us, he made it even worse by charging everyone like double the allowable rate. Vehicles over 6,000 levies. It said so on the digital receipt, so he couldn't get out of that. Apparently had been running that scam for a while, lost his license, and there's a gravel company at the lot now. Story 49. Just last month, I drove an extra quarter mile because I didn't want to pay for parking. So I was okay with walking for like 5 to 10 mile. The first faraway parking had signs on them, so I skipped them and went to an empty parking lot with no marked parking. Sketchy, dark, and far away, but fine. I came back 10 minutes later and my car was gone. Towed. Had to pay exactly $4.99 to get it out 3 days later because they're closed on weekends. Story 50. Fun fact, often going on a little vacation to another country for a few days, like Spain or Mexico, and getting a medical procedure there is cheaper than going through insurance and getting it done here. Just a thought, depending on how important that procedure was. Answer. Fun fact as someone who is in one of those countries with free healthcare, where Americans come for health tourism. This is generally seen by citizens of the country as both morally reprehensible and downright stealing. We all pay taxes to make it free. Then someone who has never contributed to our economy or the pool of money comes and takes advantage of it, delaying services for our citizens who need it and depleting resources. Americans have been known to come for €150,000 surgeries and €2 million medicine. It's different if you go to private care, pay out of pocket, and just avoid the insane insurance tax US healthcare has, but please do not use our nationalized healthcare. Story 51. I have something similar. I injured my shoulder, and you can see a bone sticking out in a weird way. I can still do almost everything, but I have had my PCP and an ortho say that it needs to get fixed, or I'll get arthritis like 20 years early. Before that can happen, I need an MRI to assess the damage. I've been denied on 3 referrals for it. They keep saying I need more PT. So, for the record, 2 doctors have said we need to see more, and the insurance company. I don't want to name them, but it rhymes with Pigna have said no without comment. It is simple. One side wants to help you, the other wants to take your premiums and not pay out. Answer: if you're in the US, check out radiologyassist.com. I have no affiliation and only used them once, so why MMV? My insurance company quoted me $600 for an MRI with insurance. I paid about $290 out of pocket for it through a place I found on that website. The facility wasn't nearly as fancy as my insured imaging place, but it got the job done just fine, and I was able to move through the approval process to surgery. It's obviously horrible that the way it is, and I feel for you, but you might give that a shot and see if it helps. Story 52. My 3-year-old was having trouble breathing. Doc calls and closest pickup is 45 minutes away. I go. I get there and the exasperated pharmacist tells me she has a 12 Oz bottle and the prescription is for 6. She can't split it and can't give the whole bottle. I, a short, pudgy dude, was going to jump that countertop, grab and run for it. Doc called, upped prescription to 12, told me he only gets 6. Story 53. Well, neither of these things are actually legal. You can't just tell someone you'll provide them with coverage and you can't just shoot someone in the back. Dude's family is mafia, so entitled people aren't exactly popular with the law. Story 54. There's no doubt it's fun, but there is a lot of work involved before you get into the actual physical engagement. I spend weeks researching the company, memorizing the people, projects, blog posts, etc. But it's a darn satisfying experience when it goes well. The pandemic changed a lot about this job. I do a lot of teaching lockpicking now as a parallel job. Story 55. Super hard to get into. Competitive as fudge. Source. Got a hacking certification. Couldn't find work. Currently working as a sysadmin. I love my job, so it worked out okay. Everyone wants to be a pen tester because it's exciting and sexy, but it's very difficult. You have to be an expert at so many things: network administration, databases, enterprise environments, vulnerabilities, security systems, lockpicking, social engineering, stalking, and there aren't many jobs to go around. Story 56. It is just a game of shady tactics. For example, one of their companies was due for an exit from their portfolio, so they, as the board of directors, forced all of the other companies they owned and called in some personal favors, I'm sure, to have everyone and their mother buy their products and services. Then they used this money they basically forced out of their other companies as revenue in the one company and made hundreds of millions of dollars on the sale because of the revenue multiple. It's almost so stupidly easy. It sounds illegal, but it isn't.